We have some breaking news just into CNN. CNN has just confirmed that Jimmy Carter, the 39th president of the United States, has died at the age of 100. CNN's Wolf Blitzer has a look back now at President Carter's extraordinary life and career.
We just want the truth again.
Jimmy Carter was elected president barely 2 years after the law-breaking and cover-ups of the Watergate scandal forced President Richard Nixon to resign. His candor seemed like a breath of fresh air.
There's a fear that our best years are behind us. But I say to you that our nation's best is still ahead.
James Earl Carter was born on October 1st, 1924. His father ran an agricultural supply store in Plains, Georgia. His mother was a nurse. He was smart enough and tough enough to receive an appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy. Just after graduation in 1946, he married Rosalynn Smith. His naval career took him from battleships to the new nuclear submarine program, but when his father died in 1953, he left the military and returned to Georgia, where he spent the next 2 decades running the family peanut farm business and slowly and steadily beginning a political career that saw him elected governor of Georgia in 1970.
To use an old 1950s term, if there ever was a classic example of an inner-directed man, you know, Jimmy Carter's it.
His close friend and associate was Press Secretary Jody Powell, who died in 2009.
He enjoyed people, and he enjoyed talking to people. I think he enjoyed those early days of campaigns when there was much more personal interaction with the voters than he did the latter stages when it was a series of set-piece speeches and large crowds.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
In 1976, the former Georgia governor went from being Jimmy Who to the White House. Not everyone in Washington was happy to see him.
Washington, even more than New York, is the snobbiest city in America. And Carter and the Georgians were treated like dirt, condescendingly and with hostility. If he had a fault, it was that he matched Washington's hostility with his own.
Early on, Carter was accused of presidential micromanaging, of excessive attention to detail.
At his best, Jimmy Carter mastered a subject and then led, sometimes very effectively, because of his mastery of its details.
That mastery of details enabled Carter to negotiate the Camp David peace accords, a deal between Egypt and Israel that led to a peace treaty ending decades of war between their countries. His most difficult presidential days came after Iranian militants took dozens of Americans hostage in Tehran in late 1979. They were held for 444 days, and 8 U.S. servicemen died after President Carter ordered an elaborate rescue attempt that failed. The Iran hostage crisis was only one of the challenges that confronted President Carter.
We must face the fact that the energy shortage is permanent.
During Carter's term, Americans endured a sharp, steady increase in oil and gasoline prices, which forced everything to cost more. To some, Carter's stark comments began to sound like moralizing.
The erosion of our confidence in the future is threatening to destroy the social and the political fabric of America.
In 1980, Carter faced Republican challenger Ronald Reagan, who exuded sunny optimism and asked voters a simple question.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Jimmy Carter lost the election, but not his resolve to make a difference. He and Rosalynn founded the Carter Center in part to promote peace, democracy, human rights, as well as economic and social development all over the world. Carter monitored elections for fairness. He went to North Korea and Cuba and met with leaders usually shunned by the U.S., including representatives of Hamas, the Palestinian organization both the U.S. and Israel have branded as terrorists.
This is a man who has a really unique commitment to public service. It really is a calling with him.
In autumn of 2002, Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, the culmination of an incredible career as a world leader and as a citizen.
I'm delighted and humbled and very grateful that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee has given me this recognition.
He still wasn't done. Carter remained active into his 90s, traveling, writing books, building Habitat for Humanity homes, and to the discomfort of his successors, speaking out on the issues of the day. He criticized Bill Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky, called George W. Bush's international policy, quote, the worst in history.
But from your definition, you believe the United States under this administration has used torture.
I don't think it. I know it, certainly.
He also took on President Donald Trump.
Does America want kind of a jerk as president?
Apparently, from his recent elections, yeah. I never knew it before.
Carter survived a cancer scare in 2015 and kept going.
Didn't find any cancer at all, so.
When he attended George H.W. Bush's funeral in late 2018, he was the oldest of America's living presidents. He celebrated his own 100th birthday in 2024. His beloved wife, Rosalynn, passed away in 2023. She'd been his steadfast partner through 77 years of marriage. Carter's diminished health prevented him from speaking at her memorial service, so their daughter Amy read a letter he wrote to Rosalynn while deployed with the Navy 75 years earlier.
My darling, every time I have ever been away from you, I have been thrilled when I returned to discover just how wonderful you are. While I am away, I try to convince myself that you really are not, could not be, as sweet and beautiful as I remember. But when I see you, I fall in love with you all over again. Does that seem strange to you? It doesn't to me.
Husband, statesman, a connection to an era now gone, Jimmy Carter was a defender of values forever current.
Those who hunger for freedom, who thirst for human dignity, and who suffer for the sake of justice, they are the patriots of this cause. I believe with all my heart that America must always stand for these basic human rights at home and abroad. That is both our history and our destiny.
And I want to now bring in Wolf Blitzer, who just reported on that obit. Wolf, good to have you. It was incredible to watch the piece. He had such an extraordinary, rich life, so many roles and experiences, having lived past 100. How do you think he'll be remembered, Wolf?
I think he'll be remembered as an important president, especially because of what he did in organizing what was called the Camp David Accords back in 1978, that he brought the Israeli leaders and the Egyptian leaders, Egypt, the largest Arab country, militarily the biggest potential threat at that time to Israel. He brought Anwar Sadat, Menachem Begin to Camp David, and he organized the Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty and set the stage, potentially, unfortunately never happened, for an Israeli-Palestinian agreement as well. But then there was a formal peace treaty signing at the White House, on the north lawn of the White House. It was just an exciting moment, and he deserved an enormous amount and got an enormous amount of credit for bringing peace between Israel and Egypt. And interestingly, and it's important, all these many, many years later, there still is a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. There's diplomatic relations, an Israeli embassy in Cairo, an Egyptian embassy in Tel Aviv. And Jimmy Carter deserves so much credit for that agreement, so we shouldn't forget it. But he also did other important things in terms of the 4 years that he was president of the United States. And I think it's also true, Rahel, that he also was an amazing former president. All these years where he was an ex-president, he really worked hard with the Carter Center to promote peace and good issues around the world. And he really devoted his life to making the world a better place. So he deserves an enormous amount of credit for that.
And Wolf, to that end, I mean, say more about how much of Jimmy Carter's professional career really happened after he left office, whether it was his work with the Carter Center or his humanitarian efforts around the world. I mean, we saw a lot of his impact even after he was out of office.
Yeah, he really worked hard. And I was fortunate enough to cover him on several occasions when he was traveling. When he was in Georgia a couple of years ago, I went down, spent some quality time with him in Plains, Georgia, went to his church with him, went to his home. We did a lengthy interview. And it was just for me always very, very important to get to know him, to follow him, to report on his life, both as president and as a former president. He's just was a very, very special man. And I got to know the whole family too, and it was a special family as well.
Yeah, and to that end, Wolf, I mean, his relationship with his wife, who passed in 2023, Rosalynn, was also a huge part of his legacy.
Yes, and they were so close. They had this incredible marriage. They worked closely together on so many issues, and they were so devoted to not only their family and their friends, but to the state of Georgia, indeed to our entire country.